October 14, 1962, an American spy plane takes these images, proof that the Soviet Union had begun building bases in Cuba to host nuclear missiles capable of reaching nearly every corner of the United States. For Cuba, it was the answer to repeated U.S. efforts to overthrow Fidel Castro. For Castro's Soviet allies, the move was a counter to the U.S. installation of nuclear-tipped missiles in Europe within range of Moscow. President John F. Kennedy issued a dire warning.
It shall be the policy of this nation to regard any nuclear missile launched from Cuba against any nation in the Western Hemisphere as an attack by the Soviet Union on the United States, requiring a full retaliatory response upon the Soviet Union.
Kennedy's military command urged airstrikes and a full-scale invasion of the island. Instead, Kennedy ordered a naval blockade, technically an act of war. At the UN Security Council, the U.S. ambassador challenged his Soviet counterpart to admit the missiles were in Cuba.
Don't wait for the translation, yes or no. I'm prepared to wait for my answer until hell freezes over, if that's your decision.
But 3 days later, on October 28th, Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev announced that the missiles would be removed. It was his end of a deal whereby the U.S. secretly agreed to pull threatening Jupiter missiles out of its NATO partner, Turkey.
What ended this crisis was not that Khrushchev backed down. It was that, in fact, both presidents believed that the missile crisis was getting out of their own control and that it would soon lead to a nuclear war. And so they both took a risk for their own political sake.
Kennedy pledged not to attempt another overthrow of Castro. Yet unbeknownst to the U.S. at the time, the Soviets had also sent 100 nuclear tactical rockets to Cuba. They would have made it the first nuclear power in Latin America. When the Soviets pulled out those weapons too, the Cubans, feeling isolated, made a historic decision to start funding leftist rebels in Africa and Latin America.
It had to make revolution in the Third World. And so Cuba began to try to export revolution, which had a great effect on the success, ultimately, of the Cuban Revolution.
But the 13-day confrontation had been diffused, a crisis in which the world saw its closest brush yet with the perils of the Cold War doctrine known as mutual assured destruction. Tom Ackerman, Al Jazeera, Washington.